Hey everyone, welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler, joined by Alex Gleitman today. A lot to talk about right now in the world of Ohio State recruiting. We will talk a little bit about the Michigan game, visitor list coming up here on Saturday, but quite honestly, on a Wednesday, we know anything we say today could be out of date by Saturday morning, so we're gonna continue to give you guys Michigan visitor updates throughout the week versus having a big preview here today. There's a lot going on, beyond just the Michigan visitor week. Right now, running back recruiting very much up in the air. The Buckeyes are looking at several targets. Jamarian Wilcox out of Georgia, Trey Cornish out of Cincinnati. Alex, what do you have here on Cornish first? We'll start with Trey first. Winton Woods powerhouse program, had a great senior year, decommitted from Georgia Tech recently, and now a lot of schools are in on him. Looks like he's going to visit again here on Saturday. Where do you think that one stands right now with Ohio State and an in-state target they've been watching here the last several months?
Yeah, I think they like him. I don't think that they love him. And I think if you spoke to anyone at Ohio State probably like 3 weeks ago, you were told that it was like a slim to none chance he ended up in this class. Now, was that because they didn't think Trey Cornish could play at Ohio State, or was that because they kind of, like, to your point that you made, were being loyal to Mark Fletcher, making him the only back in this class and not really taking a second back unless it was someone they felt very, very strongly about? Now, the tables have turned. Mark Fletcher is no longer in the class. Ohio State has 0 running backs. National Signing Day is less than 1 month away. December 21st is the first signing period. And things have just coincidentally been ideal for Trey Cornish, who decommitted from Georgia Tech after the coaching changes there. Now is getting a whole slew of offers and interest from schools trying to add pieces to their class late. And Ohio State is sitting there needing a running back. So this seems like the perfect marriage on paper. Ohio State has had success with running backs from Winton Woods that they've added late in the class in the past, Mayan Williams, for those who didn't catch on to that one. And but I just, I don't think that they're like, Trey Cornish is our guy, let's go get him and then be done. I think, they're hosting him this weekend. That's obviously something that can't be ignored. I think they feel that they could probably get him whenever they offer. So either keep the seat warm as much as you can, recruit him, love him up, and maybe wait a little bit to see where things stand with other backs. Or the route that I would personally take is offer him, take him, have him as insurance no matter what, and then kind of go big fish hunting, if you will, or add a second back that's like, if you could get a Reuben Owens or Justice Haynes, obviously you go for that. I don't think that they will personally. So I might see the more likely scenario being like taking a Trey Cornish and then taking a Jamarian Wilcox and having a 2-man class of, kind of like these high 3-star guys that, you hope one of them pans out to some extent. And then you go get a stud in 24 to kind of sandwich in between what they have now and what they'll be bringing in if neither, someone like Wilcox or Cornish works out. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, and that was going to kind of be the next thing is when they had Fletcher in the fold, it was very much a scenario where I think they were going to be perfectly satisfied with just taking Mark Fletcher, and that was that. Now I think things are a little different, and you do wonder if, kind of oddly enough, if Fletcher decommitting maybe leads them back to the initial plan, which was 2 running backs. And I think in the past, in these situations, I would have sat here and told you, hey, I think that's a bad idea. I think, if you can't find one guy you love, why would you take 2 guys that you don't love? I think the transfer portal era changes that. You don't really get stuck with guys the way you used to. I think there was a time, obviously, before the portal where you would get stuck with a guy. I mean, you never want to be in a situation where your options are getting stuck with a player who can't play for you or having to resort to tactics basically to get them out of the program, which, making their lives miserable or, just kind of, passive aggressively, showing them that they have no path to playing. The portal has made life a lot easier, I think, in that aspect, where guys can kind of transfer freely, not have to worry about, sitting out a year and things like that. And so there's a little more freedom of movement. And therefore, I think you can actually take a guy and make sure, first and foremost, that your numbers are strong. And then, look, if this guy doesn't pan out, he'll be in the portal in 12 or 18 months anyway. No harm, no foul. We'll find another guy.
Yep.
I think that is probably, to your point, is probably the prudent thing to do right now, is to consider taking two guys. Again, I don't know why Mayan Williams would come back next year. Everything would indicate he should go and take his shot at the NFL. But even if he doesn't, it's hard to imagine this entire running back room coming back intact. It feels like either Mayan's going to leave and go pro, or possibly there could be some transfer portal movement in the offseason if Mayan comes back, because there's only one football, and you now have three running backs who have proven they can play at Ohio State, plus Evan Pryor is going to be coming back off the injury wanting to play. So that's going to be an interesting situation if Mayan Williams returns, but I don't think he will. And that would make it a little easier from a numbers perspective to bring into. It'll be interesting to see what they do on Cornist. They've let him visit a couple times. Clearly they like him. But to your point, do they love him? They've offered Jamarian Wilcox. People down in Georgia seem to think this kid is almost a Jahmyr Gibbs type of late bloomer. I don't know if he's getting quite the Jahmyr Gibbs hype, but there's some similarities there. Alex, what have you heard there in terms of maybe Ohio State's chances of landing a guy who's now starting very kind of similar to Cornist, and that he's getting a lot of extra renewed interest?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to visit this weekend from what I've heard. I think it's going to be a December visit where there's no game. They can kind of sit down, get to know him really well. He could get to know them really well, see the insides and outsides of the program. Like, this weekend's great from a game atmosphere standpoint for these recruits to be at, but it's not great, I guess after Saturday at around 3:30, 4 o'clock. There's probably time from then until whenever you stay till Sunday to spend time with the coaches. But until then, these guys are going to be locked into this game. So getting him to visit in December, I think is probably the smart move. Kind of a two-way interview. But, this is a kid who grew up, I think, in the Cincinnati area until he was in about 8th grade. I think he moved down to Georgia in 9th grade. So Ohio kid at heart. I think Ohio State, I know who they offered, but is that a committable offer right now? I don't know. I think that's probably not the case, because he would be probably pretty foolish not to jump on that right away when it's like Kentucky as the other, school that right now is at the top of the recruitment. But, there's other schools. I know Clemson hasn't offered, but they're like very closely watching and looking and might kind of pull the trigger on an offer. Like, gun to my head today, I think the kid ends up in Ohio State's class. That's probably where I would be, but I think we don't know much until the visit in December, which probably comes not the weekend of the 3rd, because, well, depending on if Ohio State's playing in Indianapolis, but if Ohio State's playing in Indianapolis, it's probably the weekend of the 10th or the 17th, right before signing day. I don't know when exactly the things are shut down this year with signing day kind of moving back a week, but I wouldn't be shocked if like that weekend of December 10th is when Ohio State hosts Jamarian Wilcox.
Yeah, I agree. That's the smart thing for a guy that they're still learning a lot about, to not have half of your official visit, half of your 2 days with him be spent where you're kind of ignoring everybody and focused on the game. So I think December makes a lot of sense there. We've talked about, in my opinion, the two most likely candidates, but Reuben Owens, there's been contact there. Justice Haynes, I know they would love to get him up on campus this weekend. Do you think there's any chance for either of those two? I'm not very optimistic right now on either one. For me, even if Justice Haynes visits, I don't know if that's going to be enough. I think if Reuben Owens visits, that kind of opens my eyes a little bit, but there's been nothing scheduled there yet to my knowledge as of Wednesday morning. So how big of a long shot, I guess, do you see these two at this point?
I don't think Haynes is happening. I think if he did change his mind from Alabama, I think it would probably be to Georgia. If he visits, I mean, look, no one's coming to Columbus, Ohio in late November for the fun of it, but with this game, the stakes and everything, it could just, that is the fun of it. So I don't really think it would be nothing more than that. I mean, I know he has a really good relationship with Tony Alford and Ryan Day, and, he'll listen to what they have to say, but I don't see that one happening. With Ruben Owens, I agree with you. It's unlikely, but I think we talked about this like 2 weeks ago or last week, whenever Fletcher decommitted, when we were thinking about Fletcher decommitting, where if they could get him into a room or for a weekend and just be able to have conversations showing him what his path to the field is, maybe they won't do the NIL thing up front, but what the opportunities are, what Trey Henderson's been getting in NIL, and really just sell him. I think that I agree with you. That's probably a better chance than Justice Haynes, who's been on the official. He knows everything Ohio State has to offer. I think for him, it's more about just, I think the door is more open with Ruben Owens being committed to Louisville than it is with Justice Haynes being committed to Alabama and also having Georgia kind of on his heels.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It'll be interesting to see if, perhaps a name we're not talking about right now shows up on Saturday, or, I know they're kind of leaving no stone unturned at this point, but, we'll wrap up running back talk. How concerning is this whole situation? I can kind of argue it both ways, but, is this reason for major concern that, not only did you lose a pretty good player in Marc Fletcher, but there doesn't seem to be this slam dunk, top flight recruit sitting there to kind of slide into that position.
It's not ideal. I mean, there's no way around it. It's better than Terrence Brooks leaving them at the altar last year with literally no time to fill his spot. So at least they have, as I said, a month to figure it out. You would have loved for Marc Fletcher to have made this decision in the summer. You would have loved for him to even have made it in the beginning of the fall. Unfortunately, neither of those things happen, and this is the reality of the situation. So it's not ideal, but it's also not a death blow. And I think even if Miles Williams doesn't come back, if Henderson, Pryor, looks like they got a player in Hayden, I think that's a pretty strong room where, unless you have the injury situation like you did this year, you really won't need this person for next year. And then if you bring in a stud behind them, like the future of your room is in good shape is what I guess I'm getting at, even if, they're not bringing in a Marc Fletcher or Justice Haynes or Ruben Owens this year, but it's not ideal. There's no, would you rather have Marc Fletcher or would you rather have the guys we're talking about in this class? I think every single person, remove your scarlet and gray goggles, would say Marc Fletcher in 2 seconds. So yeah, that's really what it comes down to.
Right. I struggle with this a little bit because I agree with everything you said, but just the running back position in general, to me, it's the easiest position to find somebody. There are more running backs out there than, the supply is almost outweighs the demand at running back. They're not trying to find a left tackle. Well, maybe they are, but we're not talking about finding a left tackle here. We're not talking about finding a quarterback here, which we will get to in a minute. A pass rusher. You can find these guys. Wisconsin finds them every year, and they're never 5-star guys. I don't think Chase Brown was particularly highly recruited. Michigan's got a couple. Ohio State's got a 3 right now that can play. So while it is definitely not ideal, and I don't know how you could argue against your point about rather having Marc Fletcher, it is a position where I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be able to figure this out. They do one way or another. We'll see how this all plays out with Mayan Williams and who all is kind of back next year. But it's hard to imagine Ohio State not having a decent running back room next year. It really is. And, I think they'll figure this out, whether it's even the portal, I guess. I mean, I think that's probably not a move that they would make this year. I think if anything, as the dominoes play out the next 12 to 18 months, it might be a situation where they have to go portal for an instant impact guy the following year. Once, if Henderson has moved on, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's unfortunate. It's bad timing for sure. But like I said, I have pretty high confidence that, again, it's not hard to find running backs. And quite frankly, I think when's the last time Ohio State's running back room has been bad? You'd have to go. I mean, we're going back more than a decade. They had that one kind of
even in 2011, it wasn't bad.
Yeah, I mean, you had that one was it Jordan Hall and the Boom Heron. I mean, even that wasn't bad.
Yeah, that was the 2011 year, and it's you had Hyde start to emerge. I remember in that Nebraska game, Hyde. Yeah, it wasn't bad. The team just stunk.
Right. So like I said, if this was a different position, I might be a little more panicky about it. But yeah. Now things got, and you were all over this. You hinted at this on the BuckeyeHuddle.com message board, which everyone should be on if you're not already. It's a great week to do it. Decommitment coming. That happened. It was Brock Glenn, longtime 2023 quarterback commit, flips to Florida State. It sounds like this was kind of a mutual thing. Alex, just kind of take us back through, since you were on top of that and kind of hinted that was coming on our site. What kind of where you're at with this and kind of your reporting on this whole situation.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to watch my words here, but look, I think sometimes, and we see this almost every cycle, where these commitments are made, and then I'm blanking on Benji Gosnell last year. I mean, I think Ohio State, they took his commitment after further evaluation. Maybe he's not the best fit for what they're looking for at the tight end position, or they didn't love his senior film or things like that. And Benji, looking at Ohio State and what they do at the tight end, maybe whether it's picking up context clues from the staff, and maybe I should start looking at other options, or just, digging in things, himself, hey, well, this isn't the best fit for me. I'm going to go find another fit. And I think that that's really ultimately, in a nutshell, what happened here is Ohio State needed a quarterback. Brock Glenn, was kind of the everyone's cup of tea in the summer. He made that Elite 11 charge, and they liked what they saw on film and whatever they maybe limited saw of him in person. And I just think that, as time has gone on and Ohio State, I don't even want to say it's anything against Brock. I just think as they've maybe evaluated some other quarterbacks, which I'm sure we'll get to here in a minute, they may have found someone who they felt is a better fit for what they're looking for. And I think Brock maybe, found a better fit for what he's looking for in Florida State. So there's no hard feelings, I don't think, on either side. Brock's going to be happy with where he's going. He's going to have a great opportunity there. And I think Ohio State, in short time, will have a replacement in the class for him. So I think it's going to be a win-win all around at the end of the day.
And we could see some news on that we'll have to with signing day not too far away, but there's already been some movement. Alex, kind of, what are you hearing on Ohio State's, we'll call them plan A replacement for Brock Glenn? Who are they after, and how is this trending right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, anything could change, and they could have some new names emerge on the scene now that Glenn has officially decommitted. But I think it's pretty clear that South Dakota prospect Lincoln Kienholz, who will be on campus this weekend for the game for an official visit. He's currently committed to Washington. Corey Dennis was spotted seeing him I think it was over the bye week, about a month ago or so. And, everyone was like, oh, why is Corey Dennis in South Dakota looking at a quarterback? Well, I think we have our answer. You never know. The visit could happen this weekend. Maybe the kid doesn't love Ohio State. Maybe Ohio State doesn't love him. But I have a pretty good feeling if things got to this point with Brock Glenn where they are, that Ohio State feels pretty good about their chances to flip this kid. So, again, I wouldn't even say gun to my head. I'll just flat out say I'm predicting Lincoln Kienholz ends up taking Brock Glenn's spot in this class as Ohio State's 2023 quarterback.
And I'm actually going to, I think a lot of people are going to look at this, especially given kind of the rankings, although Kienholz is moving up. But people are going to look at the rankings, the timing, the order of things happening. And I think a lot of people are going to, initial reactions are going to be like, oh, this was a kind of a plan B filler. And I'm usually that guy that does that. I'm usually the guy who says, oh yeah, I usually talk down the sunshine pumpers on these situations. Like, look, they would have offered this kid a year ago if they thought he was, better than Brock Glenn or this, that, and the other. But here's why this isn't a desperation plan B. And it's very obvious, and it's right in front of everybody. And so I'm going to direct you there if you haven't gone there already with your minds. He lives in South Dakota. If Ohio State was desperate for a warm body and just needed someone to come in and fill the spot and just simply wanted to get anyone with a pulse, the very last state in the union I think they would go to is South Dakota. Not only did they go out there while Glenn was still committed to watch him throw, they did this a month before all this came to light, all this, all the Glenn flip and everything else. This is not what you would be seeing if Ohio State was scrambling for a quarterback. So despite the way this has played out, this has been something that's been on their radar for quite some time. I think personally they've been trying to keep it under wraps because, so the kid's committed to Washington right now, or issued an early commitment to Washington. You're trying to not attract attention to this situation. So that's why, and obviously Corey Dennis wasn't able to keep it completely under wraps by going out and you have to watch him throw. I mean, there's kind of no way to avoid that. But there's been very little put out there on the Ohio State end of things about this over the last, let's call it 6 to 8 weeks. So clearly they think they've got something here. Again, you are not going to South Dakota for a plan B recruit. You just are not. You take a kid, you take the best quarterback in Cincinnati, or you take the best quarterback in Cleveland, or you go find some lowly recruited kid in Atlanta, or some hot South Florida. You go find some hotbed area and you go find a guy who you think has kind of fallen through the cracks, or you go back to the plan B in Ohio. But you don't go to South Dakota. So they're seeing something here. And it's kind of hilarious. I've seen the comments. He's the best prospect ever come out of South Dakota. I don't know what that means. I mean, that could mean absolutely nothing. Grant Schmidt is the only other guy I think they've recruited out of there. That was a disaster to say the least. That didn't go well. He like a mulligan on that one, but so we'll see what that means. I've watched his tape. I'm not going to be that guy with you all right now and say, oh, I watched the tape, it's incredible. Yes, it is good. It's good film, but he's playing children. I mean, South Dakota high school football is not exactly the Cincinnati Greater Catholic League. So, there's things to like there, but I'm going more on not just me watching Huddle film. I'm going more on how Ohio State has handled this, where the kid's located, and just kind of, again, the early, if you've got Brock Glenn and you think this kid can't play and you're super happy with what your situation is, you're not sending Corey Dennis to South Dakota to watch this kid throw. You're just not. So they think they've unearthed something here clearly. And I'm not even saying that you have to buy that. You can be skeptical if you want. I mean, you can certainly be like, oh, I don't know why they're doing this. That's fine. But clearly they think, and we will find out we will find out if they are right soon enough. It'll, in the next probably 24 months, we will know if they were right. But clearly they think they've got something here. And obviously they're going to push for that this weekend and see if they can't, pull him away and make this happen. If this doesn't come together, Alex, then what?
That is not a scenario Marc Pantoni or Corey Dennis or Ryan Day want to think about. I'm sure they have. They didn't make this move, not having a backup plan or a plan B. But I don't think anyone can answer that question. It would not be an ideal situation to be in. I could probably go through, the 24/7 on-3 databases of quarterbacks in the Midwest or in Ohio. That would probably be the easiest to flip, and I'm sure you could find someone. But yeah, it's not the place that they want to be. I think it's going to work out. So let's do a podcast next week if for some reason this kid's not committed by next weekend.
I agree. I go back to what I just kind of ranted about there for a few minutes. I just think, I think Ohio State knows something here that we are all now just getting privy to. So we will see. That'll be an interesting thing to watch this weekend. Again, we're going to have more Michigan-centric recruiting content later throughout the week. As the visitor list changes, we will see if Caleb Downs makes an appearance at some point. I'm sure we'll be talking about that later this week. Again, my latest there is I don't expect anything definitive from Caleb Downs until at least Friday, but it would not shock me if he ended up in Columbus this weekend. But we will see. We will stay on top of things. Again, we'll have more on this weekend's recruiting list throughout the week just to keep everyone up to date because things change so quickly. Don't want to put something out too early and then have it be irrelevant by kickoff. So we'll get to that stuff throughout the week on BuckeyeHuddle.com, here on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and throughout the podcast platforms. We're going to have all sorts of content throughout the week. Huge game upcoming. Great time to sign up at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Try it for a month, $12.99, no big deal. Probably can't even get a good large pizza for that. So check us out. We'll have inside information on the message board as well, in addition to our podcast and articles throughout the week. But thank you, everyone, for watching, for listening, and we will see you soon.